We have had a lot of rain here in Northern California over the last few weeks, but today is a clear and sunny day, so I'm going to take advantage of this nice dry weather and get a few things done. Well, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Scott, and this is my YouTube channel, StaticCampervan, and we are now sitting in the camper van in question. Now, this is just a little minivan that I have converted to live out of full-time, which I've been doing for getting close to 9 years now. And I drove down here to the shopping plaza today just to take advantage of this nice weather. We've had so much rain that I've been waiting to do a little bit of cleaning and organizing, but it's a lot easier to do that on a clear and sunny day and dry day. So that's what I'm doing here today, except that I'm now waiting a little bit. I was trying to do some vacuuming and my little vacuum cleaner needed to be charged up. So I plugged it in, and while I was waiting for it to charge, I just thought, hey, this would be a good opportunity to answer a question that I've been getting frequently over the last few weeks here. People have been asking me how I deal with condensation in my van. If you don't want to wait for my whole answer, I can tell you that the short answer is I don't deal with condensation. I don't deal with it at all because I don't really have any. Now, of course, me saying that I don't have to deal with condensation at all is not really the correct answer, but it is the best short answer I can give. So for a better answer, and to give you a little more background than what I'm saying, that I don't have condensation issues normally, this is where I need to explain a little bit more. So back when I first designed my van, I realized that I needed really good ventilation. And ventilation is the key here to not having to deal with condensation issues. Now, in my case, that means that I am moving air constantly through my van at all times, 24/7, year-round. I am moving air from outside through the van. That is the way that I deal with not having any condensation issues. And most of the time I really don't have any condensation buildup at all. Although if it is very damp outside, it does mean that it's going to be fairly damp inside. It's just whatever the outside dampness air is, that's what I have inside, and that's because my ventilation is really good. And I'm allowing the air to kind of equalize from outside to inside. So that does mean that I can have kind of damp environments here inside the van, but I don't ever really have any time where I've got water dripping off my ceiling, or my bedding is getting wet, or my clothes are getting wet. That's something that my ventilation system takes care of and keeps the van fairly dry. And fairly dry meaning it's going to be the same inside as it is outside. And the key to my ventilation system is this max air vent fan that I have mounted on the roof of my van. Now, this is designed for a full-size RV. I definitely don't have a full-size RV. This is definitely a minivan. Not a lot of cubic feet for this fan to move, but I did start my life, my van life, down in Southern California, where the weather was very different, and my whole purpose with this fan was to keep the van cool. So I wanted lots and lots of ventilation to help keep the van cool in the summertime. And our summers are, you know, more like 10 months out of the year down in Southern California. So having a lot of ventilation was key for me. But what I have found out since I have moved up here to Northern California and spent a lot of my time in the Pacific Northwest and by the coast is that this whole system of having really good ventilation, that I'm moving lots and lots of air through the van, does mean that it helps out keeping the van dry inside, even on these really damp days that we get up here in a more wet environment than I am in now. Now, there are a lot of great features about these max air vent fans, but the reason that I chose this fan in particular is because of this integrated rain guard. This rain guard means that you can run the fan even in a really heavy rainstorm. In fact, you can run the fan in a really windy rainstorm. So if it's really windy and the rain is blowing around, you can still leave the vent open and have the fan running and stay dry inside. And that was really important to me, to be able to always have a vent fan that was open 24/7 year-round and be able to turn that fan on and exhaust any kind of moisture that does build up inside. But that's not the only thing that you have to think about with a vent fan. The vent fan needs to pull air from somewhere, and for that, I've come up with a little bit different of a solution. Now, my solution was down here under my bed on the floor of my van, and that is to add a floor vent. Yes, I drilled a hole through my floor. I have a couple of screens on it. There's a little outside plumbing screen that goes over the top, and then there is some window screening down in the floor vent itself, and that's just so I don't have anything that can crawl up in the van. There are some times that I'm out in the woods and there are mice and chipmunks and things around. The screening does help keep little things from crawling in, and the little topper that I have here helps me keep anything that I have under my bed from rolling around and plugging up this floor vent. And this is really important because without some type of vent, the fan up on my roof is not going to be able to draw air and pull air through the van like I need it to. Now, I know what you're going to ask here. You're going to say, why don't I just open a window to create some venting instead of doing something so drastic as to drilling a hole through the floor of my van? And that's because this is a cargo van. Cargo van meaning there are no windows back here to open up. So without a window to open, if I didn't have some type of venting, as soon as I turn my fan portion on my roof vent, as soon as those blades start to spin, that would create negative pressure and no air would move. So I'd need to open up some type of vent somewhere else, and I've just found that it's better to have a vent opened up down low. A lower vent would be better. Now, years ago when I was doing some research on this on YouTube, I saw that a lot of YouTubers that were building out their vans were putting in 2 vent fans, and that really wasn't a possibility for me either, because I just wanted to have as much roof space for solar panels, and I just thought it would be better to have more solar than more venting. So that's why I opted for the floor vent. It was just the easiest way to go for how I built out my van and just how I wanted to have my van set up. Now, I do realize that I have windows up here in the cab of my van, and I could roll those down a little bit to allow for that venting, pull the air through the cab and into the back of the van. I really kind of call that my living space back there, and then this is my driving space. And I do have them separated for a reason. The reason that I don't roll the windows down up here and pull it through is because there's lots of glass up here, and all of this glass up here means that this area, this driving area, gets very hot. That's not something that I have to deal with back in the back because I keep it separated. And one of the ways that I keep it separated is I have 2 of these blackout curtains. I have one on this side and one on my living side, and in between them I have a sleeping bag, and I cut the sleeping bag down and put it up with the zipper down the middle. So if I do need to kind of reach through, I can do that. Not something I really ever do, but you know, it's there. I figured that would probably be the easiest way to be able to access if I needed to kind of jump through or reach through. But the whole purpose of the sleeping bag and the blackout curtains is simply to try to keep the heat that is up here, that is generated because there's all this glass up here in the front cab. Want to keep that here in the cab and away from my living space in back. And yes, this was definitely something that I learned the hard way with. Before I put that vent in the floor, I would roll my windows down up here and just draw that air through. But I found when I was in a hotter area, it would just heat up the air in here, and then I was pulling in super hot heated air through the cab area and into my living space, and it just proved to be not a good way to do it. So that's why I don't do it that way anymore. So I definitely take advantage of that fact that I don't have windows back here, and it keeps the van cooler in the summertime, but it also keeps the van warmer and drier in the wintertime. That's one of the things that I've found. Good ventilation is definitely the key, and that's why I keep saying that good ventilation is the key to having a dry van, that you don't have to worry about moisture buildup, don't have to worry about condensation, but you definitely need to have good airflow. So with this setup, it means that I can keep these vents open, and I do. I never close either of these vents. The vent up on the roof stays open, and I open it and close it a little bit depending on if it's really cold out. Last night it was pretty chilly out, so I closed it down a little bit. Now, since it's gotten to be a little bit warmer, I probably will open it up a little bit just to have a little bit more air movement. But that works in conjunction with that floor vent, and I don't really even need to turn the fan portion on. Just using convection means that as the van starts to warm up a little bit, the air will just naturally come in through the floor vent and escape through the roof vent. And that means that I don't have condensation buildup really ever. Now, there is some points in time where I can have some condensation buildup, and I'm reminded about that because, well, I'm almost out of coffee. So this is my Achilles heel. No, not the coffee. The coffee's fine. It's the stove. This is an old-fashioned type propane stove, and we all know that when you burn propane, a byproduct is water vapor. Because the stove is kind of archaic and not really efficient the way it burns, it does produce a lot of water vapor that can be a little bit too much for my regular ventilation system to deal with. So like right now I've got the door open, and with the door open, of course, I'm not going to have any issues with moisture buildup. But if it's a wet day outside, if it's a rainy, wet day outside, and I've got the doors closed up, and I'm running the stove a lot, say I'm doing a lot of cooking, especially like wet cooking, like cooking pasta or soups or something like that, this can be a problem. And I can start to notice a little bit of moisture buildup if I'm doing prolonged cooking with all the doors closed. Now, one way that I can kind of get around that is to turn the fan on my vent fan. But that's not always a thing I like to do because I'm never going to close the floor vent. So that means as soon as I turn that vent fan on, I'm going to have this column of cold air rushing through. And if it's really cold outside, there's times that I don't really want to do that. So I can occasionally have times where I get a little bit of moisture buildup for a short period of time until I stop cooking and until that equalizes. Remember that water always wants to equalize. So if you get the inside of the van a little bit damp, it's going to want to get out. It just needs a way to get out. And so by having a venting system that is always open like I do, having the floor vent always open and the roof vent always open, that means that the water vapor is going to get out of the van really quickly all on its own if it's given the chance. It's just that if I run the stove for a long time, it will definitely build up a little bit of moisture in here. So that is the one thing that will cause my van to kind of steam up a little bit. But it's definitely something that's doable. And I just realized that if I'm doing a lot of cooking, I may have to just do it a little bit chilly and turn the vent fan itself on. But most of the time it's just really not a problem. And certainly if I want a cup of coffee, I'm definitely going to put up with a little bit of moisture that the stove is putting off because, you know, hey, it's coffee, right? Now, if it ever gets to the point where I think that I'm getting too much moisture in the van and I need to dry it down, I can, of course, turn the fan portion of my vent fan on. If I don't want to do that, I do have another way, and that is I can turn my heater on. Now, yes, this is a propane heater. This is an Olympian Wave 3 propane heater, but because this works so efficiently, it puts out a lot of heat at a low BTU level. It means that I can run this even on its high setting, and it's not going to be producing enough moisture that's going to overwhelm my venting system. So this is a great heater. And I've been using it for years now, and there have been times where I've got wet clothes or something in the van, or maybe I was cooking a little bit too much and I've got, you know, some moisture in the van that I want to just get rid of really quickly. I will run my heater. It does work so efficiently and so well, though, that there are times that I just can't run it. Say if it's above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, this kicks out a lot of heat, and so I don't really run it so much if it's that warm. Although I realize 40 degrees may not be warm to a lot of people, but you know, in the sense of temperature-wise, I can't really run it if it's that warm. And that is kind of a problem at times because I do move around a little bit. So I would prefer to be in the Pacific Northwest. So very much Northern California by the coast or up in the Seattle area. But you know, in the wintertime, it just gets to be a little bit too damp outside, and keeping in mind that whatever the outside air temperature and moisture level is that's what's going to be inside my van, because I've got this venting system that is always pulling in outside air, moving it through the van. So for me, it's a lot easier just to leave the wetter areas and come to a drier area like I'm in right now. It's a little drier because I'm inland right now. I'm still in Northern California, but I'm away from that kind of wetter coastal air, and so that's a way that I can keep the van just a little bit drier. Now, this is slightly off topic, but I need to bring it up because I know people are going to ask about it in the comments section. But I am not against diesel air heaters. In fact, I have a whole lot to say about those and a lot of opinions about them. And if you are a channel member, you know my opinion about them because I've made very many videos about diesel air heaters for channel members only. Now, I'm not bringing this up to try to get you to become a channel member. That's not what I'm doing right now. I'm just saying that it is something that I have looked into and have a whole lot of experience with. It's just not something that I talk openly about on the regular channel for everybody. But if you are a channel member, you know how I feel about diesel air heaters. Yes, they work great. Yes, they do provide dry air, but they are a very different type of heater because they do require lots of power and a much more tricky install. So the heater that I have and that I use most often really doesn't need much of an install and requires no power. And yet it still does do everything that I need it to do, and that it keeps me warm when I need it to, and it also dries the van down when I need to. So it is my main heater. It's the heater that I use for most everything, even though it is technically a wet heat, and people let me know that it's a wet heat, and they try to enlighten me about how propane heaters work. I am quite aware. I'm quite aware of how they work, and I've used it for, I think I'm going into my 8th year now, using an Olympian Wave 3 propane heater because it just works so well for me. I'm not saying that anybody should stay away from diesel air heaters, but I will say I don't like the knockoff versions of them. I think that the really good versions, the top 3 versions of the diesel air heaters, you know, the kind of original versions of those, I think that those work great. And if that's what you need to keep your van dry, so be it. But I'm just not going to talk them up well. But anyway, I just want to talk about that because I know people are going to ask me and bring it up in the comments. So there, I've covered it as much as I really want to cover it, at least in a public forum like it is here. And from one controversial opinion to another, I'm just going to jump into another one. It's about memory foam mattresses. I did have a memory foam mattress for a little while, and I will not ever have another one. And that's because they do suck up a lot of moisture, and so it will eventually get moldy, especially if you're in kind of environments like I'm in, that it's damp outside. It will definitely get moldy very quickly, but also just because memory foam does suck up a lot of moisture, just us laying on it means it's going to suck up a lot of moisture, you know, from us being near it, and it'll get moldy very quickly. So that's another thing that I kind of have a different opinion about with a lot of people. I will not have another memory foam mattress. I just found them to not be a good thing if you're trying to keep moisture levels down in your van. So I just have a regular kind of old-fashioned foam mattress, and it works well for me. You know, would it be more comfortable to have a real mattress? You know, yes, probably. But I know that I don't want to have to deal with the issues of a memory foam mattress, you know, sucking up moisture. Another issue that I had with memory foam mattresses is that I found that when it's warm outside, I have no support with them. They just lose all of their resiliency, and you just suck right down through them. In the wintertime when it's cold outside, unless you're running your heater constantly, they're just hard as a rock and you don't sink into them, and they just don't give you any support. It's like basically laying on the floor. So I've got a number of reasons why I don't like memory foam mattresses, but I think the biggest one is that they just suck up too much moisture, and you will have moisture issues in your van if you have a memory foam mattress. So I think that kind of covers all the main points that I wanted to talk about. Yes, I don't really have to deal with condensation or moisture problems so long as I'm in the right area. But if I am in an area like Seattle, I can deal with it, and I can deal with it by running my fan and running my heater. But the big thing is I've got to have really good ventilation. So I keep my vents open all the time. Doesn't matter what the weather is outside, and there are some times where it gets really cold. Last winter, I was up visiting a friend in the Seattle area, and it got down into the teens, and that's Fahrenheit, you know, and it wasn't terribly comfortable. You know, I would have kind of liked to close my vents, but I left them open because I was running my heater, and the heater needs oxygen. I need oxygen. So, you know, it's a healthier environment for me and the heater to run, and that way I don't have condensation buildup. So good all the way around that way. So, you know, you kind of have to think about it on all aspects, and that's what I've hopefully gotten across in this video. There's a lot of little parts that you have to think about when you're thinking about dealing with condensation. If you have condensation, the first thing you need to do is to get more ventilation. And then if the ventilation isn't enough, you just have to go through and figure out, are there some things working for you or against you? And so that's the things that I've kind of figured out over the years, and so that's why I'm doing all these things the way I'm doing them now. I'm not saying I'm doing these things the right way. I'm just saying these are the things that I'm doing, and I'm not having condensation or moisture issues, and so I'm passing them along, just saying that this is what I'm doing. Not necessarily what you should be doing, just this is what I'm doing. So that's about all I have to say. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it.